All right, let's recap a couple of things that happened over the weekend. First off, the return of Miesha Tate. Now, before we get into what happened or how wonderful Miesha looked, you have to back up because you can't give her full compliment without understanding the story coming into this, all right? Let me take it from my perspective. I've known Miesha forever. There's something called cadets. You can wrestle in a division called cadets. It's for 15 and 16-year-olds, but that's the first time I ever saw Miesha. She was 4th in the cadet national. So I go back with Misha Weiss. It seemed like she fought forever and then a little bit longer, achieved everything, including world championships, stuck around, retired. And I remember when she retired going, well, yeah, you've been doing this forever. Sure, you're going to retire. And then there was like a tail of the tape that came up. It showed her age. It was the very first number. She was like 29 years young. I did not realize, because she had achieved so much, and she had been doing it for so long. And I bring that to you only because her retirement was not retiring in or out of your prime. She wasn't into her prime or out of her prime yet. She had just done it a lot. And there's a lot of times in this sport when you can get ground down. You can train so hard, be so grueling, have so many opportunities, get on so many airplanes, go through so many camps, so many weigh-ins. You get ground down. And your best days are still in front of you, but you're tired. You're just tired and you need a break. That's what it appears happened with Miesha. Because when she came back, she had been an these are just the things she's done while she was gone. And I believe it was 5 years off. But she went to a different country. She became an executive into the business world. She comes back. She gets married. She has not just 1 but 2 kids. Oh, by the way, she decides she's going to return. Gets her body in shape. Enters the USADA pool. Goes through an entire process. I mean, there was so many things that happened where she should have had a lackluster performance. Now, she might win. She's very good. She might win, but she's not going to perform great. Can we agree on that, at least just historically speaking? Can we agree that we didn't have a huge expectation? Now, a couple of things very smart from Jump Street. First off, co-main event. For her to come back and jump into a 5-round atmosphere would have been a lot to bite off. She slowed it down just a little bit. Dipped her little pinky toe into the water. Smart. Comes out there with an opponent who was doing just the opposite. Her opponent was saying, hey, goodbye. Thank you all. And her opponent had quietly become the eldest member of the roster, right? She was 44 years old, but had done it kind of quietly, had a good record, nothing bad with it, wasn't showing off, not cutting a bunch of promos. I only bring this to you because she was achieving a lot. She deserves a lot of credit. But she didn't necessarily go out there and demand it. So it was one of these things where Miesha, ahead of time, a lot of things were done right and they were done smart and they were even done slowly, which you don't generally get to do at this level, but I have to commend her for doing it that way. Hold that thought because I'm going to steer that in another direction. The performance starts, the fight. Slow start in the first round. Was not ideal, wasn't perfect, wasn't everything she wanted. Okay. But she began to grow, and that snowball began to get stronger and stronger. And I would argue that some of the passes, some of the grappling aspects of this fight were better than before she left. Like there was a time Miesha was on her feet, and when she dropped down, she didn't drop to guard. She dropped into a pass, did a knee slide, rotated her hips. She was doing some stuff in grappling that was better than before she had left. So this whole ring rust business, why it might be true, and logically should be, as wonderful as she performed, if that was her rusty, if that was her not at her best, look, sky's the limit. And where I tie in taking things slow, there are people that are trying to push Miesha right now into Miesha versus Holly Holm Part 2. Fine. And we can do it. We just don't have to do it now. We can. I'm only suggesting for Miesha, if she sees this, we don't have to do it next. Making a comeback is a big deal. Having a successful comeback, huge deal. Bask in the glow a little bit. Use this as a springboard. Up your training. Believe in what you're doing. Follow the process, but get in there another time. That should be the only goal for what's next. One more time. We don't need the beautiful name. We don't need to be the main event. We don't need a title fight. We can, but keep easing into it. It was a really wonderful performance. Almost shocking, in all fairness. It was almost shocking how good she looked and the improvements within the grappling. Now let's fast forward because it's Islam. Nobody questions whether Islam is good. There are some what we call haters that will question, is he great? Does he belong in there with the Dan Hookers of the world, the Michael Chandlers, the Charles Oliveras, right? In all fairness, that question said about many people. There's no insult if you question Islam or anybody else. Can Islam go with Gaethje? Like, these are fair questions. But for Islam to get an opportunity like this, and I'm talking about a main event spot, at times in the fight, he looked human. By example, I remember when he was taken down, right? He got pushed into the fence. He got his hips snagged. He got picked up and dumped. The way that Islam scrambled and came right out on top, I'm glad he got taken down. I'm glad he got taken down to see how he responded to it, which was incredible. You watch how these guys are grappling, by the way, it's very different. I've been a grappler my entire life. Wrestling, black belt in jiu-jitsu, can I brag? Is that okay? But I've done some sambo. I played around with judo. I've done a lot of forms of grappling. What these guys are doing, Coach Nurmagomedov, and I'm talking about senior, right? Now that goes to Khabib. I'm talking about Khabib's father. The way that he is training these guys in grappling with some of their controls, the way that they are passing and going to submissions. Islam even had a pass last night where he then flies into an armbar. He missed it. It didn't work. But it was very similar to the armbar that Khabib had done to Justin Gaethje. I'm only sharing with you because that's not jiu-jitsu. That's not wrestling. That's not sambo. That's not catch. That's not judo. That's their own thing. These boys in Dagestan are playing a whole nother game. They have their own attacks. If you look at the offensive attacks that Khabib does up against the fence, that's a different game. That's not wrestling. That's not judo. That's not sambo. That's not catch. Khabib will credit it to sambo because that's respect. That's not. That's Dagestan. That's Nurmagomedov. That is very unique to these guys. And I love that I got to see that side of Islam. I love that somebody got to push him, got to put him in a vulnerable spot, even if it was for a second. So I don't question that he's good enough. What needs to happen for him to get that shot, okay? He's got to get attached to a big name. Now, that can happen. No problem. Tony Ferguson gave the blessing to Dariush by example. Somebody else is going to extend these opportunities. They're going to extend that olive branch. Somebody's going to have to do it. And now that Islam's got this beautiful record, and now that Islam has proved to be a main event fighter, the only thing he could do next is to get a big fight. And he's got to go from a big fight into a title fight. This is just the process. I'm stating the obvious, right? Water's wet. I get it. But he's still going to need somebody to partner with him. Somebody's going to have to come along. I had a call, by the way. I'm talking to you guys. I'm at Submission Underground, okay, in case you recognize the set. I just got a phone call from Ali. And Ali said, I will give $100,000 to Tony Ferguson or RDA if they grapple Islam in Submission Underground, but they got to beat him. If they beat him, I, Ali, will personally bring and give $100,000. So I said, Ali, is this private? Do you want me to call these guys and try to line the matchup, or can I make this public? He said, you can make it public. Now, of course, they would also have my side, right? Just to show up, they're gonna have something else. I'm only presenting for you, okay? And this isn't the way that I would do business. I'm not to Tony Ferguson or RDA or putting them in somewhere corner. I'm actually trying to do something else right now, which is just there are some people that believe in Islam who want to see him get that belt, who are so confident, but it's something larger than the sport. It isn't about him being a world champion. It's about the tie-in to Khabib, to Coach Nurmagomedov, rest his soul. That's their belt. That's their belt, and they have the guy that should have the belt for their team. That's how they believe. But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. They're willing to put their athlete in there against anybody. They're willing to do the heavy lifting in exchange to get the heavy reward. It's an interesting story. It's a compelling story. It's one that I think I'm more interested in today than I was prior to this match. Where is the story going to go, and how is Islam going to get attached to one of these bigger names? Look, that's always a tough game. If you're a really hard fight that not a lot of people know, and perception is reality, you see why guys try to stay away. It's the boxing model that nobody's ever found out a way to get around. That just isn't what they do in the UFC. The best fight the best, the end. Islam is breaking into that field. Is he a Chandler? Is he a Gaethje? I got to throw Dan Hooker in there too. For my money, Hooker's as good of a 55-pounder as there is out there. So there's a lot of bodies. It looks like Kevin Lee has left the division. Looks like Kevin Lee's going to stay up at 170 right now. So the numbers start to get limited, but the way that this is going to unfold and where the chess pieces go, it looks like a lot is being put on RDA. RDA was officially called out. RDA's never turned down anybody for any reason. I can't imagine he does now, unless it's to stick it to him, right? RDA's got an ego too. He might be a little upset at the way this was going on. And the only thing you getting in there with me, a former world champion, is going to do is to help you. Just to stick it to him, RDA might tell him no. I don't predict that he does. I predict that we're going to see Islam versus RDA. I'm just sharing with you, there's pieces on the board that are moving. And there's a clear plan with a strategy that is blunt force. It is aggressive. It's very interesting if you see it. And I'm bringing it to your attention so you don't miss the show.